What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another Game Time Discussions. I'm Emery Cuzzy. I'm sitting here with Cameron Selby, and we're going to be going over another NFL mock draft today. This is going to be our post first wave of free agency mock draft, kind of taking into account the new landscape of all these teams. Of course, we did a mock draft before the NFL Combine, before we had all the information from the Combine, and then also the information from free agency. So now we're going to revamp it. We're not gonna change everything. We're gonna change possibly maybe who was at that spot, but not necessarily the position. Sometimes just kind of looking at different ways these teams are going to go and possibly climbers and fallers from the actual prospects themselves.
Right. Yeah. So this is our second of four total mocks that we're going to do. The first one obviously was just a way too early. Did really well, and it was a lot of fun doing, but there was no trades involved. This one will open up a little bit more fun and flexibility with it. A lot of, we have some trades in this one included, and not all of it really has any kind of scuttlebutt or rumors that this could possibly happen, but just ideal that makes sense in the grand scheme of things with teams that are lacking picks or have an abundance of them that could be aggressive moving up. And then we'll do a or what would we do where we play the role of GM. So this is not predicting what's going to happen. We're going to tag team, basically taking over franchises and stuff, which was fun to do last year. And then the final one, which we'll do the week of draft week, which we are 31 days away as of this recording. It's going to be a whole lot of fun as we're getting down to the nitty gritty. We've been doing a lot of prospect rankings and videos. Please go check those out if you haven't already. Like, subscribe, comment, do all the fun things leading up to the draft and be a part of it, because we have a big old draft party coming along when the draft takes place on the 31st. I'm sorry, 31 days from now. So the 24th of April.
Absolutely. Yeah. We kind of have, and of course, we know that the Tennessee Titans are on the clock. I will pull the screen up. We have the first three picks on there already. It hasn't changed for us, so that's kind of why these three guys are all together. Cam Ward going to from Miami going to the Titans. They actually just completed their pro day, and he looked good. So he checked more boxes as you would expect with his throwing ability and stuff like that. So I'm not that worried that he's the number one quarterback in this class. That does not mean that he is number one prospect in this class by any means. He's much farther down the list, but he is going to be the number one guy because the Titans do need a quarterback. And trying to go from a 3-14 record, riding a Will Levis last year, might just change it over and let Cam Ward go. Abdul Carter to the Browns. I know that they kept Myles Garrett, but we're in the belief that best player is in this draft is Abdul Carter, and that's why we're sticking with that. That means they're going to have two really, really good pass rushers on this team. And then the Giants get Shedeur Sanders out of Colorado. We talked about this, the Giants possibly being a trade-up spot to the number one overall pick, because we also see a gap in Shedeur versus Cam Ward.
Yeah, so like him said, it's pretty much the same as our first, but our opinions are different on it, at least in that regard, because we really had some back and forth on who was going to take Cam Ward. Obviously, he's jumped up to a minus 700 as of this moment, favorite to be the first pick taken, and that's not team to person.
Right.
That is just selection to person. So that's very significant, because that just shows that he's had a significant gap between everybody and the rest of the field. But with Tennessee, they haven't made any moves at quarterback. There hasn't really been any, rumor of trading back. It seems like everything kind of quieted down going into the combine. So the fact that there's really nothing being reported of any kind of possibility of, I think it's really going to take a absurd offer that you can't refuse to decide to move down. And I just don't know if the Giants, even though they've, been a lackluster franchise for about a decade now, I don't think that they're badly run enough to warrant
making this decision.
Because even though it seems like it's unjustified, it's probably going to take 2 first-round picks just to move up 2 spots.
Yeah.
Because of the guy that they're getting. And so to me, it's just Tennessee is taking Cam Ward, or they're trading back, and it's an offer that can't be refuted.
Yeah, so my problem is the current roster for the Giants is, Tommy DeVito. Mm-hmm. That's it. There's no one else.
And Jameis Winston.
Well, okay, yeah, I forgot. That did happen. Weekend. Yes.
But yeah, I mean, they were in wait-and-see mode with, Aaron Rodgers and his situation, which there was a visit And it sounds like he's more
Yeah.
likely to go to Pittsburgh, not the Giants. But that was basically a trickle down effect with Russell Wilson, who they have given an offer to. But then the Jameis Winston thing came out of nowhere, and he signed a 2-year deal. So this isn't you're the quarterback for now, but if we bring in somebody else, you're going to be cut. You're probably going to be the QB2. And so I think that honestly kind of paints a picture of they're probably going to go rookie quarterback.
Right.
It's just, are they going to be so aggressive to move up to get Cam Ward, or are they fine going with Shadur, which, there was some rumors of trade down, or not trade down, but a little bit of a fall for him. But then there's a lot of people that we like that are saying his floor is at 7, which, again, he's not our 7th best prospect, but we're going with what we're feeling and hearing and all that
It's
stuff.
really, really hard for me to go. The Titans, I mean, Cam Ward is minus 700. So it's really hard for me to be like, okay, so if he's going number 1 overall, Shadur's not going 3. Like, that's hard for me to kind of wrap my head around because of the fact that I do believe that the Giants need a quarterback. They're not going to jump over Shadur to go to Jackson Dart. I don't believe in that case. And so if they need a quarterback, 3 is the spot. I don't think they're going to try to wait and get back in the first round, or wait till they get their next pick at 35 or wherever it's at in the second round. Like, it makes more sense for them to just take a quarterback here.
Now, one thing I did hear that was interesting was that with Cleveland, obviously they power ranking wise have the number 1 amount of draft capital in this
Yes.
current draft, even though they just have one, first, second, and third pick. There's not multiple day 1 or day 2 picks that they possess. But Daniel Jeremiah, I was listening to him and Ian Rappaport go back and forth. Love those two guys. And he was saying that he wouldn't be surprised if Cleveland were to target 1 in the second round or move into the first round to get 1. And he brought up a name like Tyler Shaw.
Yeah.
Who's kind of risen a little bit in a lot of people's eyes, even though there's some age and like it took you a while to get here, but at this point there's a lot of positivity about him, and so just because they're going BPA best player available here, that doesn't mean that they can't address that very soon in the short term.
That's fair. And we've talked about, our quarterback video is out, so if y'all want to go watch that, we talked about all these guys. So top to bottom, and some of them were on our original big board, so you can go watch that video. There will be a new big board, and we'll talk about where those guys are after. But yeah, there's a conversation to have that they could wait and get another guy later on. As you said, Tyler Shuff is the perfect guy for that reason, just because of the age, actually, because he's actually more pro ready and ready to start today if they needed him to in the short term, basically.
Right, and then they did bring in Kenny Pickett for the time being, but at
Right.
the end of the day, it's not like, they're actually saying that he's the guy. They're probably not going to bring in competition.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think that's the answer necessarily. But let's go over. We have our first trade.
Well, that didn't take long.
But I want to okay. I'll put it on the board so everybody can see it. It's going to be New England to the Raiders. We're going to trade 2 spots back. New England has has the worst offensive line in football, guys.
Yeah, finished ranked 32 out of 32 this past season.
And there are plenty of guys on the O-line that we can bring up. Cam talked about a couple guys before this, video we started, how bad they have been. Well, there's only 1 good O-lineman on their team right now. Or I guess 2, if you think of what's his name that just got there?
Morgan Moses was
Morgan
signed,
Moses, yeah.
which he,
but otherwise,
did fine. Mike Onwenu,
he's the only other guy.
but he's a guard. And then they're taking a flyer on Garrett Bradbury, former first rounder, who was released by Minnesota. They released him without really truly making a move. So and the Cole Strange, remember, infamously, he was like a 3rd round projected pick that was drafted in the first round. It's been okay, but the biggest thing is that they have not addressed left tackle. Their current left tackle starting is Vidarian Lowe. If you haven't heard of him, in limited playing time, his rookie year, he finished 139th out of 140 among PFF graded tackles. The next year after that, he finished 131 out of 137. And then he improved a little bit last year, going 102nd out of 141. So he has never been a top 100 tackle in football, according to PFF. They have to address that. I know a lot of people are starting to put Travis Hunter here, and they need a weapon for Drake May. Yes, I agree with that, but at the same time,
they can't protect Drake May. That's more important, is keeping him healthy. And also, I just want to remind everybody, Mike Bravel's their coach. Like he likes building from the inside out. It's not the other way around. One thing that I was going to put in because when we do these mock trades, we have to talk about what teams are going to move up. And so with New England, it was kind of a situation where they could move down and get a mid-round pick. And we talk about how deep this class is, more so than like it's a more quantity over quality class. You want more picks in the mid-rounds. Well, New England moves back 2 spots and gets that mid-round pick.
That would give them a hypothetical third round pick
Right.
In this draft, which is important if we want to foreshadow a little bit.
Yeah, but the other team other than the Raiders that I was thinking was Carolina. They could have been a team that could have moved up, and that would have put them into the 8th overall pick. And so we'll talk about, I just want to talk about the kind of the scenario of who could move up. But I think New England is the perfect trade down option because there is no offensive tackle that really should go number 4 overall. And if you want to get the value, well, add a 3rd round pick to get possibly a similar ability offensive tackle.
Yeah, so in our eyes, there's two guys that we think are warranted in moving up for, and I say let's get right into it and see who the Raiders moved up for.
We're actually going to show all 5 because, we're going to show them all. First guy that the Raiders did move up and get Travis Hunter out of Colorado. The Jags got, right after that, Mason Graham out of Michigan. Patriots did get their offensive lineman. It's Will Campbell, the same one we mocked in the first draft. And then the Jets go Armand Mimbu out of Missouri. He's been climbing. We'll talk about him. And then the Panthers get Jalen Walker out of Georgia, edge, to help their pass rush. But yeah.
Yeah, so with Hunter to the Raiders, one thing that we know for certain is he is going to be a top 5 pick.
Yeah.
The thing is, I'm not entirely convinced that New England should be the favorite because of the pressing need that they have at offensive lineman. And I just don't think that Mike Vrabel gives me the vibe that he's going to just get the gadget guys first when the offensive line is not fixed or even attempted to be fixed. With the Raiders, kind of similar to New England, they have a corner need, they have a receiver need. But even more so pressing on both sides. New England at least has 2 formidable corners to where you don't have to force him to be your every down, lockdown, shutdown corner. But yeah, I like this Raider fit. Travis Hunter feels like a Raider,
right?
In my estimation, I think it'd be a fun, I guess, possibility that no one's talking about right now. A lot of people have the Raiders picking Ashton GT as the first running back. He's the favorite, or that is the favorite pairing right now for his odds. But yeah, I think this is a fun thing. And on top of that, if somebody wants Travis Hunter, they're going to have to move up to get him. That's if they're not already currently in the top 5, obviously, because Jacksonville, he's not falling past there. They're not going to let him off the board because they also have a corner and a receiver or playmaker need. So I think it's a fun pairing. It's a, no reports or anything to it, but I think it makes sense for both sides. And on top of that, New England getting to move back, but still addressing a more significant and pressing need to me than, cornerback / receiver.
Yeah, and I wanted to read off some of the names of on our depth chart just so that people kind of really realize how bad, the Raiders are on both sides of the ball. Our starting cornerbacks are Jack Jones, who has done fine throughout his career in the NFL. He's probably an average corner at best. And then we drafted DeCamarion Richardson last year in the 5th round. So that's our starting corners. And then we have Jacoby Meyer, Trey Tucker. These are our wide receivers. Jacoby Meyer and Trey Tucker are our best 2 wide receivers right now. I don't even know the names of the other guys. Like, I don't know them. Like, they've never played.
Ramel Caton is currently listed as a starter.
Yeah, they've never played, really.
Yes.
And our best receiver truly is Brock Bowers, and we know that. But otherwise, like, the ones that are going to line up outside, we don't have any. We could take Travis Hunter and say, hey, we're going to play you on defense for most of your time, and then we're going to get you some real legit offensive snaps. Like, for Travis Hunter to play the way he wants to play, and he wants to play 90% offense and 90% defense, there are only certain teams that are going to actually allow him to do that, and to have the depth chart that makes the most sense for that. The Raiders are one of them. Right. And that's why I think this pairing makes the most sense. I think there's going to be pushback that, like, the Raiders, oh, Pete Carroll's not going to trade up and this and that. Well, Pete Carroll's old. I think he's going to send chips as far, like he's going to push all his chips in
Yeah,
on guys.
he's not
There's no
he's
point.
not here to be here and develop and
No, he's there to win.
Yeah.
And we're all about it. Okay. We're all about
just
winning.
win, baby, right?
Oh, please. It's been so
But-
long.
But with the Raiders, I mean, they only give up a third rounder. Obviously, it's their only one, but they do have 9 picks total to play with, 8 following a hypothetical trade. And they are going to take a running back at some point in this draft. I feel very confident about that because the only addition that they've had is Raheem Mostert, and he fell off a cliff last year and obviously is past 30 at this point. But at the end of the day, I just think the if you talk about a pairing, Travis Hunter plus third, fourth round running back in a historically great class versus Gene T and a very weak receiver class in the third, fourth round, hypothetically, wherever they put him.
And
I
no
just
corner.
think it's a better. Oh yeah, and another corner.
And
So-
no, yeah, I'd have to get both at the end of the day.
yeah,
so
I think it's a better combination of the two. And again, I think it's something that more people should think about as a fun possibility. I hope that they're, for your sake and for just the fun of this sake, that that might be a legit possibility once we do another one in a couple weeks.
well, like I said too, I think it's the best thing for New England to move down. So that is truly how I feel, and I think you have a similar sentiment that there's no tackle at that spot. If everybody had a perfect year and Kelvin Banks didn't have random film issues and Will Campbell didn't have short arms and I don't know, Josh Simmons didn't get injured. Like if all of those things worked out, maybe there would be an offensive tackle that we were like, hey, they could pick it for. But
Yeah,
like
he won't be there later. But at this point, if you stay in the top 10, you're going to be taking one of the 2 consensus top offensive linemen in this class. And I
Right.
feel very comfortable saying that. So going down 2 spots and you basically still get the choice
yeah,
of whichever one. We think that Will Campbell fits because he has the left tackle experience. That's where they need. Mimbu has been right tackle purely his whole college career so far. That doesn't mean he can't transfer or translate, but we just think Will is a better fit at this point
Right.
in time.
all right, let's go on.
That was fun.
Yeah, that's. I mean, I like trades, but I think ones that make actual sense and like really feel right. That's one of them right there. Going on to 5, it's Mason Graham, and Mason Graham is a top 3 player in this draft class to us on our big board. He is the number 2 overall player on our big board. Is at least on the last big board. You have to wait to see. I mean, it might change, but he's absolute stud. He can't be blocked, and I think Jacksonville should go best player available. And that's what this is. They are picking the best player available at this point.
And I think we even mentioned in our mock 1.0, if you wanted to compare and contrast the two, Travis Hunter fell to them at 5. And so we were like, best player available. But we did acknowledge that if he wasn't there, Mason Graham was the guy, because that has basically been lock and step. It's Mason Graham unless
Right.
for them. And so if they stay put, they're going to get one of the 2 or 3 best overall players in this class. They should feel very good about it. They do have several needs, so it's not like I'm shocked if they go, with a hunter or a playmaker or an offensive lineman or like all of the guys that are going in this range they could use, except for, I guess, edge, because they have somewhat of a formidable duo with Josh Hines-Allen and Trayvon Walker. So a lot of fun stuff to do with him. But, yeah, I think it'll help a whole lot for a team that just really, really struggled against the run.
Yep. That one's easy. I'm not
Yeah.
worried about that one.
Not much to spend on that.
Next up, here's the New England pickup for Will Campbell. New England gets Will Campbell. The New York Jets get Armand Mimbu out of Missouri. And just a comparison, because I think that it's always good to compare these guys that are going in the top of the rounds and things like that. We can see that Mimbu has got the green light on that side. And I think that that's important because I had him very high, very early. He is higher on our board before everybody else. And now people are catching up because he did the freakiest things at the combine. Will Campbell had a great combine, but you can see that Mimbu was pretty dominant this year. Run game, pass grade was great. Total pressure is 9, and then of course less 2% or less is amazing for pressure percent.
Yeah,
especially in the SEC.
And similar to what we said about New England, Jets have a need. They lost both tackles because they went the old route with Tyler Smith and Morgan Moses last year. Morgan Moses goes to New England. Tyler is still unsigned, but he is not going to return. But they did draft Olu Fashanu last year as a left tackle. So that fills one box. The other box is currently held by Carter Warren. And I told you about the backup that New England is currently listed as a starter. Well, Carter Warren doesn't get much better. He was 124 out of 137 in his rookie year, and then 129 out of 141. So he has not been a top 125 tackle in his limited playing time in his first 2 years. I don't think there's any ties with him as a third year 26-year-old that they're going to just give him the reins. So yeah, I think it's a pressing need. This is the first spot I would kind of also see a scenario with like a Tyler Warren as well.
Fair.
But at the same time, again, more pressing need to me.
Yeah. The other possible starter would be Chukwuma Okorafor, who is has a offensive grade of 44.4 this year.
Oh, yeah,
so
that's not much better either.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like this is this position that they should address. And if you're going to pick a right tackle in this class, the best right tackle is Armand Mimbu. That's what you should do. That's just how I feel about it. I mean, there's a better left tackle, but we're not going to go into that right now. We'll get into that later on. But, Will Campbell, I think he's a guard. And I know that everybody wants to fight. Like, he had great tape at tackle. Well, I don't think he had the amazing tape. So, as you can see, there's some issues on his with 18 total pressures. That's a little bit of an issue. So, I think that there's a lot to be seen. And I think he feels like a New England type of player, though. I think he feels like a very much so a Mike Vrabel guy because he is a good run blocker. He gets after it. You're not gonna lose effort from Will Campbell. It's just there are other things that he can't control that he lacks, and that's why I think there's other guys that are better at the position overall.
Yeah, I love the pairing for both of these teams if they were to end up this way.
For sure.
Especially if New England gets a third plus the guy we had him
taken
mocked to
anyways.
fourth overall
Right.
before.
All right. Next up, the 8th pick, and we've had our conversations. We'll just have them again. It's okay. With Jalen Walker, I think that the consensus is he's a lot higher. We have him in the mid-teens, and everybody else has him top 5 even. I think Daniel Jeremiah put him to 5 for the Jacksonville Jaguars over a Mason Graham. And I'm just not there because I think that's just a little high, obviously. And then second off, I don't know what he brings to the table other than, I think he should play linebacker. So that's kind of the issue. Is like if he's playing inside linebacker like he did in college most of the time, like he only rushed the passer 119 times, I believe, or something like that. So I'm I need to see it more. And I think that me wanting to see it isn't crazy because I know that he's got quick twitch and things, but there are a lot of issues that we saw on tape that everybody's trying to act like they're not talking about because he's just such a good effort guy and good at certain things. He's also an outlier as a pass rusher because he is short and he's got shorter arms and all these things that we aren't talking about. Well, how many outliers are we going to bet on in this class? Because if we're going to bet on Will Campbell, who's an outlier arm-wise he's in like the 5% range. Mm-hmm. If we're going to bet on Jalen Walker, if we're going to bet on Donovan Ezeraku, all these guys are outliers. And I can't bet on all of them. So I'm going to go against this Jalen Walker love. But I do think if the draft analysts that are obviously much bigger than us, align with the NFL and they like Jalen Walker, we're going to put him higher.
Yeah, and this is kind of the first pick of where it's truly a wild card and where it gets pretty tough. I feel like organically the first 7, it's just like it's either this guy or that guy, or it's for sure this position for the first 7 teams to me, unless there's a trade up into that top 7 from somebody that obviously is not drafting there currently.
Right.
But Carolina, they got skill player needs. They got some needs offensive line. They need a lot of best player available on defense.
They were 29th offensively and 32nd defensively. Yeah. So I'm with you.
Yeah, this is just get the best guy that suits you. And to us, this was kind of a cop-out a little bit just because of the fact that so many people are putting him now in the top 10. Mm-hmm. He's kind of separated himself in that regard as like the third defensive player off the board after Abdul Carter and Mason Graham, respectively. So if he's grabbed that reins and Carolina truly needs a really good defender, then that's just kind of the way we put him this time. But obviously they still have other needs to address later on in the draft.
Yeah, and we had this conversation a little bit, like going back and forth between, first off, going back and forth of should we move them to 4 and get Travis Hunter,
Mhm.
or if they're going to stay at 8, should they go wide receiver?
Right.
Because it's either wide receiver or defense to me. But I think what kind of came down to it, both of their starting outside linebackers, which Jalen Walker would have to play, are both free agents after this next season. So 2026 free agents in both Jadeveon Clowney and DJ Wanham. So after those guys, you have to have somebody to either be a predecessor, or you have to re-sign them. They're a lot more expensive than a Jalen Walker on his second year of a 4-year deal or 5-year possible for a first rounder.
Yeah, and I saw a mock, and that's kind of what we started thinking about as Carolina being a candidate to move up to hypothetically 4 for New England. But in that scenario, when I looked it up, it was actually Abdul Carter that fell to 4, not Travis Hunter. And obviously,
It's a big difference.
between the Raiders and the Panthers, the Raiders have pass rushers. They re-signed Kuntz, obviously extended Max. Christian Wilkins is going to be back, so it's not as pressing. Even though Abdul Carter obviously is our favorite and best prospect in this class, Carolina obviously really needs a true edge. So if that is the scenario, I'd much rather Carolina move up to 4 if that's the guy that's available at 4. But it's just kind of one of those things that remains to be seen. If you believe in the 2 quarterbacks in the top 3, and then Cleveland picking either Hunter or Abdul Carter, whoever falls to 4, that's kind of how we did the if then with that.
I feel like it's more expensive
Yeah,
to
I think it will
get
be.
Abdul Carter than Travis Hunter. And so also moving 4 spots and stuff like that. Like it's a little bit it'll be a little more expensive, but at the same time, like you have to go get a guy like Abdul Carter. There's a reason he's the number 1 player on everybody's big board, not just ours, and or I guess Travis Hunter. But I think that Abdul Carter is a game changer, so I can understand moving up for him. I do want to see what happens there. I mean, if anybody falls to 4, because at 4 we're kind of having a conversation, because I do, like we said, New England should move back. They need O-line. They should move back. So anybody could decide, hey, like Abdul Carter's here. You're the Bears. I'm going,
Why not?
because
That would be
that would be
incredible.
perfect for them. There's a bunch of teams that you could make a case for, in my opinion, that could be perfect for.
I'm really rooting for chaos, for somebody to just completely jumble this top 8.
It will.
If that happens, if we're talking, we're doing the live stream in the draft party, and something's going down, whether it's a plot twist like a Michael Penix last year, or somebody moving up that we had no idea was possibly doing so.
Right.
I just really am rooting for that kind of chaos, because it feels kind of chalky early on a little bit with how most people are kind of having the similar ideas.
All right. Now going on to 9 and 11. We have Jahdae Barron going to the New Orleans Saints, and then we have San Francisco taking Will Johnson. We skipped the 10 spot. You'll have to wait and see. But New Orleans getting a cornerback. I think it makes sense in like the fact that they're going to have to replace a ton of players that are older and taking a lot of their cap. We've talked about Taysom Hill on other videos. He's 35 years old. He has $18 million in cap hit this year. Cam Jordan is 36 years old. He has a $10 million cap hit this year. And all of these guys are 2026 free agents, including Demario Davis, Tyrann Mathieu. They're taking all the money, and they were 30th in defense this last year. One big thing also for me personally is a new defensive coordinator in Brandon Staley. I don't know if he's just a bad head coach and a really good coordinator. It's possible, because he was a bad head coach. Let's just be very honest about it. But
My problem with him wasn't being the bad coach. It was that your specialty is defense.
I know,
and
they were
you
so
were
bad
so
at it.
much worse on defense than when you started the job. That was my whole thing.
Yeah, no,
That's a story for another
I
day.
agree with that though. But they're going to swap to a 3 down, and I expect them to try to replace and get younger at important positions. And Jahdae gives them a chance to play a lot of different ways. He's really good in zone. He runs a zone style defense. So Jahdae fits what I think they want to do, what Brandon Staley wants to do. So that's why I think he made the most sense here.
Yeah, and with Jahdae, he's really kind of risen by almost default, as if you want to consider first pure corner. It's hard to just consider Travis because he's both.
Right.
But non-Travis, cornerback 1, everybody else is hurt, but he's the one with the breakout year. He's
Right.
the one with the Jim Thorpe Award this year as the best defensive back in the nation. And yeah, he's very schematically friendly with what New Orleans wants to do, like you said. Um, I think it's a really strong pick. And Will Johnson, if he didn't have his down year and have the questions, again, he's going to, avoid his, or not avoid, but not participate in his pro day due to a
Mhm.
hamstring injury, which is a separate deal with what he dealt with last year. There's just nothing that he's done this offseason. And so there's no buzz. And now people are just kind of second guessing the tape, which to me sometimes makes you fall low more than you should or deserve to. But at the same time, San Francisco, goodness gracious, they lost a lot of players on defense, especially in the secondary. They lost 3 secondary members, and Will Johnson, kind of similar to what you said about Jade. It fits what they want to do. They're a very aggressive defense, playing man, and yeah, we think that it's a pretty solid team to player scenario, which is, I believe, why we kept him the way we did with our first mock when we put him to 11.
It wouldn't surprise me if Will Johnson was the number 9 pick. It wouldn't surprise me if, honestly, Will Johnson has a massive, like top to bottom, floor to ceiling in what the picks, because he could go to the Raiders. He could go to Jacksonville to me
Mm-hmm.
if they believe in the 2023 tape. If they don't, they'll pass on him.
It's
He
kind
could
of
fall to 25.
it's
gonna
kind of
be
similar
crazy.
to Derek Stingley and how you viewed him, because his breakout freshman
Yeah.
year, and he really had 2 straight duds, more so than just one down year going into the draft. And then people were like, "Is he better than Sauce?" And when he was taken above Sauce, it was controversial.
Yeah, because I had Sauce as the number 1 player in that class.
Mhm. And then a year later, it looked very dumb.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden now, it looks like, all right.
Sure.
Well, now it's a true debate on who's the
Yeah.
better corner. And Derek Stingley just set the record for cornerback guaranteed money. So he's obviously panned out for being the third pick, being a little bit of a reach at the time, but they believed in the talent. Do you feel the same about Johnson? And you even brought up an interesting point of, because we've been on a tear of just cornerback ones for drafts and stuff like that. And Will Johnson, it's hard to even place him as like the worst of the bunch. But all of those guys, Devon Witherspoon, Sauce, we talked about Stingley,
Mm-hmm.
all of them win in the top 5. And no one's really given him that buzz anymore. And if he's falling into the teens, like that just kind of, I think, serves well for somebody that really needs a corner, and they're going to get a very good value pick.
Yeah, that conversation was like intense, because I think one of the biggest questions is where do you rank Travis Hunter? Travis Hunter's probably behind everybody on that list. Stingley, Sauce, Devin Witherspoon. There was one more that we're missing.
JC Horn.
Oh, JC Horn. But Pat Surtain,
Yep.
based on tape, he could be behind
last.
all of those guys. Will Johnson's in that grouping, and then I kind of have that like, oh, there's Travis Hunter. But a lot of people have Travis Hunter as their number 1 corner because Will Johnson, tape issues, falling, not doing anything, all that stuff. So yeah, if you get Will Johnson and say Will Johnson falls to 14 and the Colts get him, I'll be happy. Say he goes to, the Cardinals, I'll be happy. He can take Sean Murphy Bunting's spot, all that stuff. So it's kind of that kind of thing where I'm like, Will Johnson has a lot of possibilities, but you're going to be happy with him at the end of the day, in my personal opinion.
And then one last thing before we do leave this side, just talking New Orleans, this isn't a cornerback conversation, but more so a quarterback conversation. There's starting to be a little bit more buzz about Jackson Dart and being a possible top 15 pick. Like, we kind of had the vibe of, we didn't put him in the first round in our mock 1.0, but New Orleans is the first destination that is starting to get a little bit of talk. Mel Kiper put him at 9 in his recent mock. And I think that's the first location for him if he were to. So New Orleans, kind of similar to Carolina, a complete wild card as a top 10 pick, because they do have several needs. But if they went on the route of just, hey, we're not going to be great this year, and you're probably not even going to play still this year, or at least until the end of the year. But I think it's kind of setting themselves up for the future. And we saw what Denver did with their cap held, that they took a rookie quarterback, and then all of a sudden, sneakily top 3 roster in football, almost.
No
Debatable.
holes. No holes.
No holes. And that's just 1 year after releasing and having the biggest cap hit, dead cap in history. Saints don't have a dead cap like that, but they are in cap hell still. but the easiest way to get out of that is a rookie quarterback. So that's why there's a lot of interest there. After that, it's hard to see the pairing between 9 and even all the way to 21 in Pittsburgh.
Right.
But that doesn't mean somebody can't trade up for his services. But he is getting more buzz than you would like to think, going earlier than expected.
So I have a very close friend that he's not he follows football really closely. He's actually a coach, and he used to be a TCU player personnel. I don't know what the actual term was for his title, but he follows the New Orleans Saints very closely, and he's not necessarily very happy about Derek Carr. And of course, we've been through it. I was a Raider, and I'm a Raider, and Derek Carr was a Raider. So I think that finding a way to get cheaper at quarterback, get cheaper at positions that are very valuable, is a good way to help your franchise get out of holes. Cornerback, left tackle, wide receiver, quarterback, all those positions, D end, edge, of course. Those are important positions to try to find a way to get cheaper at. So if the Saints did go there, I wouldn't be mad at them.
Right. And I mean, Kellen Moore went there and they restructured Derek Carr's deal immediately. So he is at the very least 2025 going to be the starter going into it. But just think of what Kellen Moore as an offensive mind can do with a young quarterback, because we haven't seen that. He's been going the veteran route basically around the league in recent years as an OC, and it's been successful. Has had top 5 offenses every place he's been, essentially. He went to Dallas, then he went to the Chargers, most recently Super Bowl champion with the Philadelphia Eagles. So just wait and see what he can do with somebody on a rookie contract, and I'm excited to see what can come of it. Again, kind of similar to what you said about Dennis Allen and Brendan Staley. Difference between OC and being a head coach, but I think that's the direction that they might be one to take in the near future.
Right, of course. Let's go on. This is the where the conversation really starts. We have the running backs, 2 of them at the 10 and 12 spot. The Chicago Bears go Ashton Jeanty, and the Dallas Cowboys go Marion Hampton. I am absolutely on board that Ashton Jeanty is a Bear. Ashton Jeanty, they upgraded all their interior offensive line spots. They have a young right tackle. Their left tackle is serviceable. Let's just be honest. He's very serviceable, even though he was a 5th-round pick and that people want them to upgrade. He's good. New coaching staff, drafted Jahmyr Gibbs coaching staff, and a cut DeAndre Swift coaching staff. Let's just be, let's talk about Ben Johnson. That's exactly what he did while he was in Detroit. And then Chicago was 32nd offensively last year. So for them to get better, difference makers like Ashton Jeanty are the guys.
Yeah, Jeanty, basically a tie between the Raiders and the Bears currently as being not only the first running back off the board, but draft odds. It's like plus 130 to one, plus 150 to the other, and then it's like 10 to 1 on the other teams.
Right.
So even if you look at the mocks way back when, way too early, a lot of people were putting him to Dallas, and I was just under the impression he won't make it to 12. He just won't. I just did not have a feeling that he would. There's been too much buzz about it, and then lo and behold, a couple weeks later, he hasn't lifted a finger this offseason in terms of draft workouts or senior bowls or anything.
Because he doesn't have to.
And he doesn't have to, and everybody's got him in the top 10 now. So basically, this is his floor to me, and this scenario worked out. But like you said, Ben Johnson came in, immediately traded away DeAndre Swift, and moved forward with a better set of running backs. And he wants a guy that could just grind it, and the running back room carrying that offense. I mean, back-to-back years with 30 touchdowns from the running back room is just incredible. And Jeanty is going to lead the way in a big way if Chicago went this route. They've picked up 3 interior offensive linemen in free agency. We had them taking a offensive lineman in the first 1.0 mock. But yeah, I love this selection for them. With Dallas, could be a little controversial, but Mel Kiper, guy notorious for hating running backs going early, both mocks, he's taken Marion Hampton to Dallas, and it's really grown on me. You may think, why is he only 2 picks or this close to Jeanty? They're a lot closer than you think as prospects. I think the gap is closer to from G&T to Hampton, then Hampton to whoever you have as RB3 in this class. It's just he was on a bad Carolina team that didn't have a lot of eyes on him, whereas G&T led his team to the playoff, and he was on a lot of highlight reels because of his season. Omarion Hampton's bigger, stronger, as quick, and less wear and tear on him over the last few years. Yeah, I don't understand people putting wide receivers in a bad class to Dallas. I just don't think it makes sense to me.
Right.
If Tet goes off the board, I'm not going to be upset. But someone like a Matthew Golden, who people are really prompting up to the 12th pick, I don't think, and this may be controversial saying it out loud, write down the names. There's about 45 receivers, 45, that I would probably be more comfortable having on my team as a wide receiver next year than Matthew Golden.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable.
If that's the case, why am I drafting a receiver 12th overall, especially with the spike in money that receivers are taking and wide receiver 2s are getting paid $25-30 million?
More than running backs.
Omarion Hampton will go into Dallas and become borderline, if not a consensus top 10 running back at the end of next season if he were a Cowboy.
No, I completely agree.
That's not controversial at all.
No.
So I would rather take him or a Tyler Warren to be top 10 positional relevance as among their peers compared to a receiver that, give or take, could maybe be a above average wide receiver too.
We should not, and this is a serious conversation. This is not last year's class. We have a wide receiver video out. I would love it if y'all go watch it, but this isn't last year's class. This is a class where, okay, I'll spoiler alert. Matthew Golden hasn't moved from wide receiver 5 for us. It is what it is. Like it's not going to change. There are 4 other receivers we see as better because, and then if you're going to put him at 12, like you're justifying him being the number 1 receiver off the board. I can't get there, but
Not even close.
no, but Omarion Hampton is in our top 10 on our big board, and that was pre-combine. And then he, then they all go and kill it. First off, it wasn't just him, but like everybody killed it. Genty killed it too by not being there. I mean, because he didn't have to. So it's like Genty's top 5 in this class. Omarion Hampton, you should put between 7 and 12. And if he's not in that range, I feel like you're very wrong.
Yeah. And the only receiver that is debatably in that similar range
is
Tedero
McMillan. Yeah,
McMillan.
that's it.
Not Matthew Golden.
And-
And there's a lot of people starting to put Golden over Ted in wide receiver rankings, and I just am not buying that one little bit. And I'm not even a Ted guy of seeing like, oh yeah, he's for sure going to hit his upside, and he's actually falling down draft boards a little bit as well. Obviously, we had him 8th in our 1.0, but one thing I just want to do, because I know we have a lot of Cowboys fans that watch this show and are friends of the show, I want y'all to get down in the comments and tell me your thoughts on this pick, because it is a little controversial, because Dallas does need real help in the skill position area. Omarion Hampton, tight end Tyler Warren, Matthew Golden / Tet. What would you rather have as an upgrade at that, as an upgrade to the offense? Because there is a need for all of those positions, but we just think that prospect wise, Omarion and even Tyler Warren, who was in our 1.0 here, make much more sense than gambling on a bad wide receiver class when you already have a wide receiver 1.
I think if you're a Cowboys fan, you should probably listen to this room in general, because Trayvon Diggs was 17 to the Dallas Cowboys in my first mock that season. And of course, CD fell, but you know what I mean. But Cooper Beebe, who was 15th out of 40 centers this year, was one of my favorite. I told you he was a fridge. He's an absolute fridge. He's the starting center for the Cowboys. Tyler Guyton was a guy we didn't like, and he was the 73rd tackle out of 81 this last year by PFF. So believe me on this. You want talent, it's going to be coming out of this this running back class, not the receiver class as much. And Dallas, you have a hole, and go fill it. That's how I kind of look at it. Let's go on though. Maybe. There you are. 13th, Nicky Manowari. Nicky Manowari.
This might be our biggest riser from round 1 to round 2, jumping all the way to 13 as safety 1. Obviously, he was the man of the hour at the combine. His historical numbers that he put up, basically a perfect score
Yeah.
as a relative athletic score. And Miami is a team that has very popularly been given a safety or this first safety off the board, but it's been Malachi Starks for the most part. But Nick has closed the gap, and we just think schematically that kind of fits more so what they want to do because he's just kind of a chess piece that you could kind of put anywhere more so than just being up top.
Nick versus Malachi Starks is an interesting conversation to have because I know that other analysts actually put Malachi Starks, and I believe DJ had Malachi Starks to Miami in his recent mock. And I agree that we have Malachi Starks ahead of Nick in our rankings. Like that is right now, that is our current thoughts on it. But at the same time, I believe that Miami loves athletes. If you haven't watched them draft in the last few years or bring players in, they love athletes. Devon Achane, Jalen Wright, who they didn't even need a pick, but they did. Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle. On defense, you had Chop Robinson, who was the most athletic of the edges from last year's class, most likely.
Noah Hedgebo, I believe is his name, the pick that they got
Yes.
from Kansas City for the Tyreek Hill.
Yeah, all of them.
Yeah.
All of them are just athletes.
Yep.
I think, obviously, Nick is a better athlete than Malachi Starks. Even if on the field I might think Malachi's the better player, it doesn't matter when you're Miami and you just want to put as many athletes on the field as you can. That's why I think that Nick Manwari will be a Miami Dolphin if they do go with this route. But there's other routes they could go. They do need offensive line help. But at the same time, I just think they love versatility. They need to replace Javon Holland. Nick Manwari's the guy.
Yeah, both of them are worthy of being top 20 picks. I don't know if both of them will, for sure, because people are just truly rising up boards at more important positions in my eyes. But I don't bat an eye if Malachi goes here and then Nick goes to where we have Malachi going later on. It's basically a flip of like a similar range flip of what we had previously. But at the end of the day, yeah, Miami gets an upgrade, much needed upgrade in the secondary after losing a couple guys.
Yep. And then going on to the next guy. Whoop, there it goes. Tyler Warren. He just happens to fall. I think that there's a big situation where if Tyler Warren gets to 14 to the Colts, it's really going to push Colston Loveland down. But if Tyler Warren goes early, Colston Loveland's probably going to be a Colt. So that'll be kind of the chess game. We'll have to watch and see. But Tyler Warren is going to be is one of the best tight ends we've seen recently. He's a little bit older. Second team All-American because Harold Fannin had an amazing season and broke every record there was. But Tyler Warren was the best playmaker for Penn State this last year. And so I think that he offers a lot as a contested catch guy, a yards after catch guy, and things like that. So I think he's a really solid player.
Yeah, and even when we were putting this 2.0 together, you even said, and I agree completely, that this feels too low for him.
Yeah.
But there's only a select few spots that I just think that makes sense. So if the Jets aren't taking him, and the Saints aren't taking him, and the Cowboys aren't taking him, by default we're going with the chalky, gross pick that I'm not even confident he will be there to begin with. But at the end of the day, Indy needs a tight end because they haven't addressed it at all. But at the same time, they don't really use tight ends as much as other teams prioritize them. And they have other than tight end, awesome receiving core for the most part. It's kind of like Green Bay, but more reliable almost with the guys that they have. I mean, Alec Pierce.
Quarterback play is the problem.
Yeah, quarterback play is a problem. And then Jonathan Taylor, once he's healthy, top 5 running back in the NFL. So tight end is a need, but it's not the most pressing need. But at the same time, best player available, I think by far he's that guy at this point.
I don't think they've had a tight end worth talking about though in 15 years. Dallas Clark's probably the last one that makes any sense of like, hey, that's a solid tight end. Otherwise,
yeah, they had Eric Ebron as a bust first round pick.
Yeah,
for a little bit. That had some noise. I think he led tight ends in touchdowns one year, but other than that, yeah, like you said, hasn't had a mainstay there for a long time. So I think he's a guy that would just be there for a decade and just always be making plays.
And then if you want to talking about improvement of a team, you have Drew Ogletree, Jelani Woods, and Will Mallory as your top 3 tight ends. This is the quickest improvement on this team. If you just look at where can they help themselves the most? It's tight end. And Tyler Warren falling to them is they're going to be running the card in. Same way I was expecting Brock Bowers to possibly go earlier last year. Tight end fell. He fell to the Raiders. I didn't think we were going to pick him, but I'm not. I'm happy we did.
Yeah.
you know what I mean? So there could be a team that's like, hey, we watched what happened to Brock Bowers. We're going to replicate that because it's a very copycat league. If a team is like, hey, we're going to take a chance on a guy, Miami, I don't think Miami would be a crazy spot because Jonnu is Jonnu and he's been bad on other teams. Why not get a real guy? And there it is, So there's options through other teams that could go for it. I even think the Bears are an option, even knowing they have Cole Kmet. Because it's still an upgrade, in my opinion. They can run more 12 personnel, and they have other options. So
yeah, I know Ben Johnson's heavy into like some of the most used personnel in the NFL last year, but at the same time, they just did extend Cole Kmet last offseason. That is my only hesitation with that. But if they were to take him, like you said,
cool.
Raiders took Michael Mayer, love him.
Yeah,
but Brock Bowers is him.
Yeah,
so that's just kind of the difference. Sometimes it's like even Justin Fields controversially being traded away and them getting Caleb. Yes, Justin could have thrived and done fine if you built around him, but he will never have the ceiling that Caleb Williams has.
Right.
And I still hold true to that, even though he had an okay rookie year. Like, it's going to improve.
He's 21.
Yes.
So it'll be okay.
Yes. All the factors pointed, but that's another story for another day.
All right, on to the next.
Let's move on.
Michael Williams. Going to the Atlanta Falcons. And Atlanta, we actually had penciled in for an edge on our first video. They did add Morgan Fox and Leonard Floyd to the defense, so that at least helped. But they still only had 31 sacks this last year, which was 31st overall, 23rd in complete and total defense. Michael Williams can play multiple positions on the line, inside, outside, and also stand up. He's a young guy. He just killed his pro day, so I don't have any issues with his athleticism. We just got to get the most out of him, and hopefully Atlanta can do that, basically.
Yeah, I've been doing mocks for 6 years now, and at this point, I feel like I've put edge to Atlanta every single year. And I'm going to continue doing it until they finally just...
They haven't done it, yeah.
Yeah, they just have
Bijan,
not. Yeah.
Michael.
A couple at the end, I'm like, okay, I know you're not going to do what I think you should do, so you're going to pick Kyle Pitts, and I'll let you do that. But Micah should have been your pick, and I don't feel bad saying that now. But yeah, Mikel, he's kind of one that's kind of fluctuated up and down. This is the range of the edges where it's going to be all over the place in the draft. I can already tell because no one's ranking is the same.
No.
And he's been as high as 8. He's been as low in the 20s. That's kind of how it's going to go because there's about 5 teams between 15 and 30 that could use an edge, and he could very well be the 5th one, but he could very well be the first one of that range. I mean, it's all about scheme and how you view these guys. So there's the Mike Greens, there's the Shamar Stewarts, the Ezrakus, all of these guys. If we're not surprised, or if they take any of them this early, it just depends on preference. And right now, we just gonna go with Mikel. And a lot of these teams, I feel like we're just gonna say give a point for the position, but wrong mass major, and they're just going to be mix and matched throughout. That's just kind of how I feel like it's inevitable at this point.
No, I agree. The problem is the tiers for most people are all kinds of jumbled because we have Mike Green and James Pierce high, Michael, Jack Sawyer, Nick, Scorton, Shamar, Donovan, Jordan Birch are all in the same range. Like, so if you like one of these upside guys, you probably take Michael or you take Shamar. If you want someone that's probably a better floor guy, and you take, I don't know, Jack Sawyer or Donovan Ezraku. But wherever you go, we're going to get, like you said, the point for actually getting the position right. I expect Atlanta to go edge, or there's a couple other spots that they might go, but like truly edge is probably the most pressing need of them all. Mm-hmm. Then the Arizona Cardinals are going to take Gray Zabel, and I love this pick, and I love that he's jumped up as far as he has. It says we're not the only ones doing this. Offensive tackle position has improved. Paris Johnson Jr. did well this last year. Interior offensive line has to improve, and Gray Zabel gives you versatility at guard or center, and he's had one of the best pre-draft processes of any player, period. So I really like him. We've talked about him multiple times, and we're going to keep talking about him because he's awesome.
Yeah, he's one of our guys.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
In this draft, and I know people. It's not like we were like very very early to the party. Like there's several guys that we can point out that like, hey, nobody was on him and we were first, but we were among the first to be on him and put him higher on draft boards, and people are really starting to catch up and put him in this range of first true interior offensive lineman off the board, especially because Tyler Booker, as an example, who has been as high as 10 in some mocks, really did not kill it in the combine, and he's just really unathletic and slow and seems like a huge risk, and so people have pushed him down. Enter Gray Zabel, who's been nothing but awesome this entire pre-draft process.
Yep, absolutely. He's easy. We've talked about him 100 times. I texted you in probably mid-January about him because he killed it against Colorado, his only FBS team that he's played, and then he went on to kill the Senior Bowl. So next up, we have a trade. Oh, sorry. We have to show you recap. Here you go.
For our 2.0, not our 1.0.
Right.
But absolutely. Yeah, so a couple corners going off the board, a couple running backs going off the board. Safety 1, very good value pick with Tyler Warren going to 14. Again, everybody's putting him there in mocks. My gut says that he won't be there at 14, but that doesn't mean that Colts wouldn't take a tight end at that point at 14 if that were to be the case, because Colston Loveland has some suitors as well. But I think it kind of hinders on, Tyler going early as well. And then McHale, first of the many edges you're about to see, and the Gray Zabel interior line, big upgrade for Arizona.
Yep. All right. Next up, we got mock trade. I alluded to that by accident. I think that this is finally, we gave, first off, New England traded earlier to go back to get the same guy they were going to get anyways. And now they get to move back up and, try to help their quarterback is the biggest way to put it. The Bengals, they are moving back because they need to get cheaper. They just paid so much money between the three guys, the quarterback and then two receivers in Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Joe Burrow in the last couple of years. They have to get cheaper at positions of need. The way to do it, and their defense was awful. They went 9-8 because of their defense, and they want to score 100 points next year, but they're still going to lose half their games if they don't get any defense. So the way to do it is get more picks. This is a good class. Getting that 68th pick from the Raiders through the Patriots to the Bengals.
Yeah, and there is a good feeling that somebody is going to be here that shouldn't be at 17, whether that's on offense or defense, because if there is a third quarterback or a second tight end or two running backs or all of it, that's going to push a lot of these guys down. And if Cincinnati says, oh, yeah, McHale shouldn't be here, or whatever defender they love, they need help on all edges or all levels.
Yes.
So I wouldn't bat an eye. But like you said, they need to get young because they put a pretty penny on two receivers and trying to pay their pass rusher as well. And I don't know how it's going to work, but they're going to try to make it work. But you got to get cheap elsewhere. With the Patriots, like we said earlier, 3 third-round picks because of the trade back to get the 68th from the Raiders. That would give them 3 picks between 68 and 77 between the end of beginning of the third and late into the third, I guess. Yeah. But yeah, New England, everybody wants to put Travis Hunter there. I think this is a fun pairing. New England, you get your best offensive lineman on your board, and you also get the first wide receiver that's not named Travis Hunter, and you get the best of both worlds, being able to protect Drake May and having somebody as a massive upgrade with your wide receiver 3s by committee on your roster to help upgrade. I think it's a slam dunk home run for Patriots fans if something like this were to hypothetically happen.
Talk about helping your young quarterback out. You get a left tackle if you believe he's a left tackle, and he's got that, upside. If he does hit his ceiling as a left tackle, he's going to be great. We're not going to, we're going to bat an eye on that for sure. You get him a true number 1. You use the draft capital you just acquired, and you get rid of your next year third, but you have 2 more thirds in this draft. It just makes so much sense. And also, there's a lot of wide receiver 2s in this class. Wide receiver 2 style players where they play in the slot. They're not necessarily alphas. They're not your true X receivers, right? Well, Tedero McMillan is a true X receiver. He's going to help you in the red zone. He's going to do all those things. This is a guy that will help Drake May in a way that the other guys on the team cannot. Mm-hmm. If they went Matthew Golden here, it wouldn't make any sense to me because it would just be pairing a bunch of the same players together.
Exactly. And that was kind of what we talked about with before. Mel Kiper and DJ on their 2.0s had a Denver spot and a Charger spot. Chargers just re-signed Mike Williams, brought him back. You also have Quentin Johnson, who's the same exact player, and they're very similar, or if not the same type of player as Ted. And then Denver, your best receiver is an X receiver that is pretty much just a extend the field, similar to what Ted does. You need different styles of receivers. Like you said with Matthew Golden, they've got Douglas, they've got Kendrick Bourne, they've got Boutte, all these guys that are just like
Polk.
5'10" to 6 foot. Polk, yeah, he was a disappointment for a lot of people. A lot of 5'10" to 6 foot guys that are just gadget or close to the line of scrimmage guys that don't really wow you in any way. Tet will wow you.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, he's one of the only ones in this weaker class that has the capability of being a wide receiver one. Whether or not I believe he can become that, besides the point. He has the makings of being one if he can hit that true ceiling and he proves me wrong, which I don't root against players. I just have expectations. And if he beats my expectations, I'm not going to bat an eye. I'm going to be like, good for you.
Yeah.
And this would be, to me, a fantastic landing spot that nobody is going to have at this point because everybody's moved him into the teens or the 20s. So New England would have to move up to make this work. But getting extra draft capital, not giving up a ton of huge value, but getting, like I said, filling two massive holes on your offense to help your young quarterback, I think would be just a home run. And if this were to hypothetically happen where they were able to get Tet and Will Campbell or Mimbu, but filling two needs on draft night 1, I would say that they won the first round or won Thursday night.
Yeah, and they have the capital. We talk about that. We just talked about that. They are ranked 4th of all capital in the draft class. And if they did obviously get the Raiders pick, they would be ranked possibly 3rd or 2nd overall. So they have the capital to do this. And I think that I remember wanting to do a lot of things with Miami about 3 years ago where I was like, they could have had 4 total picks in the first round because they would have moved back and then they would have, done certain things. I love that because it gives you a 5th-year option. It gives you very talented players. Like, you might have to pay for it a little bit. It's okay. It's worth it, in my opinion. So getting Tedero McMillan is the way to go here. And then on the other side, you have the Seattle Seahawks, who are going to get Colston Loveland. Colston Loveland is a guy that is going to be very good in this league. And I actually am very excited about him. He's slowly moving up our board, but at the end of the year, I didn't know how good he was going to be, truly, because he played on a team that did not throw the ball, and the quarterback play was atrocious. And in the prior year, he was really good. But this year, he had a 20% contested catch rate, all these things. And I'm like, okay, that's weird. Go watch the film. The balls being thrown are atrocious. He's really not able to be helped out on that whole thing. And I actually thought that his numbers reflected much better after watching his film and thinking about first quarterback got benched, second quarterback got hurt. First quarterback had to come back in. It was a whole thing throughout the year. And I thought he just kind of rolled with the punches. He's good at football. He's not somebody I think he's legit. And so he's a very fun player.
How I compare Tyler and Colston is I think they have similar ceilings, but I think Tyler will be able to thrive anywhere.
Yeah.
Whereas Colston needs the right spot or fit because when he does not have the ideal situation, he struggles like you said last year. Seattle, I'll just let you go ahead.
I think it's perfect.
Really?
I do. And I don't know that we're going to agree on that. But Noah Fant is an unrestricted free agent in 2026. Mm-hmm. Their new OC is Clint Kubiak. He loved his tight ends in New Orleans. If we remember, he loves, of course, Taysom Hill because he does everything. And then also Foster Moreau, Jawan Johnson. They used them very well last year. Also, former teammate A.J. Barner is on this team. And A.J. Barner is the blocking tight end. And if they use him in similar ways, we might see a Michigan reunion style of play here. I think that, with DK Metcalf, it would have been very muddy with Colston because he wouldn't be getting the same important throws that he will be getting without him there. Because his important part of the field, he's good everywhere, but his really important part of the field is the red zone. and I think he's going to thrive for a team like Seattle.
I just personally don't love the way Seattle's building their offense.
That's fine.
So they have done a bunch of contradictory moves because they've gotten younger at quarterback, but then older at wide receiver.
Right.
And the guy that they signed, Cooper Kupp, well regarded, going home because he went to Eastern Washington. You do the same things that your best wide receiver that's currently on the team does. And so I feel like that's not a good complementary. And then you have something like Colston Loveland, who is kind of, a extender over the middle of the field. That's basically what they do as well. I just think it might be, a little bit of a cluster. On top of that, Sam Darnold, they signed him 3-year, $100 million. Who knows if that'll work out and if he can fulfill and meet expectations now that he has had a breakout year finally. But I'm just worried that it's a weird situation to where he could be one of those that just it doesn't work out because of the situation. And it's just kind of something that I have to see for myself too before I really truly make an opinion if this were to be the fit.
If you compare him directly to Dalton Kincaid, then I understand. Like that's because I think that's a little bit of like the reservation you have too, is like Dalton Kincaid does not thrive at the moment in Buffalo, which he should.
It's like he has an MVP on his team, but he turns into Tavares Jackson as soon as he's trying to throw to Dalton Kincaid.
Yeah.
No disrespect to Tavares Jackson, but he wasn't the MVP of a league way back when. Rest in peace to him. But I mean, yeah, it's just one of those things where it's just.
But at the same time, I think that he's more touted as a prospect. I think he's a much better prospect than Dalton Kincaid was. And I originally thought they were similar. I think their style is similar.
So, one quick question. I know it's going way back when, but Noah Fant.
Okay.
As a tight end, he was the polarizing guy where TJ was a safe bet. They went to the same school. Shockingly, we don't have an Iowa tight end amongst our best in the class. But at the end of the day, it was one of those high risk things, and he didn't go to a great situation. And then all of a sudden now is coincidentally in Seattle, O.J. Howard, similar guy where big fit that just whatever reason couldn't be used. Kyle Pitts. There's a lot of kind of these athletic tight ends that just talented as can be, that have just failed to go to good situations that it just kind of gives me a little cause to pause.
But I will say Colston is actually can block. Like a lot of those guys had really, really big issues with blocking. I think you could put him as an inline tight end and he could block for you. He's also very young. He's a very young player, and I think that he could fill out. Obviously, you see him on the screen. He's not very big. He's a little bit bigger than Ted, but I think honestly he can fill out and block much better than those other guys can. They're not going to be used the same way necessarily, but I do believe if they loved running the ball in New Orleans, they didn't have a power back. Now they do, Kenneth Walker, and I think that that'll be a lot of what they do in 12 personnel and like trying to come downhill. And I think he'll fit a lot better than you think at the end of the day. Right. So that's kind of my spiel on it.
Completely on board, and for what it's worth, DJ and Mel, who we're going to be, comparing and contrasting to because they're two of the best in the biz, both of them top 18. I think DJ had him to 18, and then Mel had him all the way to 14 because he had Tyler Warren going earlier. So for the record, he's going up draft boards, and
DJ also has him in his top 8 big board. So that's a little bit higher than we have him, but I mean, I don't see how that's
it's worth noting for sure. All right. Yeah, closing out the top 20.
Right.
This one is one of our favorite prospects, but unfortunately, obviously, discovers a torn shoulder labrum that is going to keep him sidelined for a few months. Don't know if it'll cause him to miss significant time at this very moment, but at the very least, he's going to be out for most of the offseason. And I wonder how much of a dip he'll take because of it, because he was kind of really rising, and we saw mocks that happened right before the injury was discovered had him all the way possibly at 9 to New Orleans, and we were just like, yeah, we're one of our favorite prospects, and he would have been much earlier. But he's a guy that is the perfect candidate of he's going to dip, and it's unfortunate, but he's going to land into a great situation. I've seen others that have said Tampa Bay for Jahad Campbell being one of the best team to prospect fits of the entire first round.
That was one of my favorite fits in this. And you asked, we were going back and forth, and you were like, okay, for Tampa Bay, we've been putting edge to them. Like, who do you want? And I was like, I really think I want Jahad Campbell there. Like, I think it makes the most sense. And then I gave my spiel and, whatnot. And then you were like, okay, let's do it. And I was like, all right. But it fits. It feels right. He feels like I know we already saw this too. Like Devin White goes, he doesn't do that well, but what he did give the Tampa Bay Buccaneers is pressure and effort. And if you watch the Super Bowl, we know he really helped them win that Super Bowl originally. So I think Jahad is a better pass rusher than Devin White was, obviously.
Just saying something because I think he had like 7.5 sacks this rookie year.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Coming from depth, he was a natural pass rusher from his linebacker depth. I think Jahad can actually rush off the edge and do some other things like that. He actually came into Alabama as an edge rusher, but then was playing with the likes of Will Anderson, Chris Braswell, Dallas Turner, all these guys. So he just happened to have to move to inside. But I think he's legit, and I think he's one of the closest guys to getting a first-round grade from us. But I think that if he does fall because of the injury, we saw Peyton Wilson fall last year. Peyton Wilson then also was very, very good for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So even if he falls, he's going to find possibly a better situation. The Los Angeles Rams was our first. In our first mock we went to the Rams. If he falls to the Rams, like that's a beautiful situation for him, in my personal opinion. So if he doesn't go early because of the injury, fine. But I think he should be a first rounder. If he's not, the Raiders are going to take him and we're going to be happy.
Wishful thinking, speaking into existence.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, Jahad, if he were to fall, or like our 1.0, we had him to the Rams, and then obviously here to Tampa. We don't do draft grades of A+, A- because no one's good enough to project how this works out.
Right.
Julio Jones got a C- on his draft grade. Like it's just one of those things that you can never predict. But we do have winners and losers, and situations, scheme fits, or player to team combinations that just make too much sense, and that is truly one. And then Mike Green, he's one that obviously was the biggest winner of Senior Bowl festivities early on. Kind of tailed off or quieted off a little bit, but not in a negative way. It's just there's not a ton that's come out that's just kind of vaulted him even higher. He kind of plateaued a little bit to the middle of the first round, and that's kind of where he's going to go. Again, similar to what I said about Mikael Williams. Who knows?
Yeah, they could switch spots and
go.
it'd be fine.
I mean, they're all different. It's all good. We like Mike Green a lot. He's the definition of the productivity if you want that. That's just kind of one of those things with him. Denver, a lot of teams had him or them taking tight end. One of the top two won't be there in our eyes. Then a lot of people have him taking running back. Both of them won't be there in our eyes.
And Evan Ingram got signed.
And Evan Ingram by signed. But like we said earlier in the video, sneakily not many needs.
No, yeah.
So it's one of those things where it's just best player available. They had one of the best pass rush cores last year. Number 2 ranked offensive line. Wide receiver could make some sense, but again, not a Tet style, but a better version of what Marvin Mims.
Yeah, Mecca Ibuka or Luther Burden could make a lot of sense here.
Make a lot of sense. So, yeah, it's one of those things. And Mike Green going there, having another edge, I think it can't hurt them when they're trying to rush a lot of talented quarterbacks in that division.
Yeah, and they have young edge rushers right now. Like if you just look at their team, Jonathan Cooper was a 7th rounder a couple of years ago. Nick Benito, who went crazy, and then Jonah Ellis, who was in last year's class. So they have some young guys. Adding to it would be great. 19th offense, 7th defense, but at the same time, their offense is going to get better because their O-line is better. They're going to get a running back in this class. I don't know who it's going to be, but they're going to get one, and it's going to be great because whoever goes there is going to be good.
Just please just use him and only him and not just a 4-way committee.
Yeah, Audric is going to take over. Watch out. It's just a whole thing. Yeah, but so I think that this is a good fit for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
And then let's talk about something that is more surprising than others. Jackson Dart, we've talked about him. He's going to be a first rounder. Where, we don't know. This was a conversation me and you had that was kind of controversial because of the fact that like Pittsburgh might not be the best situation. But at the same time, we're mock drafting. This isn't necessarily what we would do, but Pittsburgh needs a young quarterback, especially if they bring in Aaron Rodgers. He's, like you said earlier to me, Aaron Rodgers isn't going to help anybody get better at football. He just doesn't care. But Jackson Dart could be a predecessor to an Aaron Rodgers after he leaves. And I think that, Pittsburgh is always good. They have a good defense. He's not going to have to push to be amazing necessarily. He's better than Kenny Pickett type of thing. And that would be a good spot for him if you just like look at the surface of it all.
This has quietly become his floor to me in this draft. Again, I said in the 1.0 we didn't mock him there in the first round just because we had no trades and organically it just didn't make sense. But and then on top of that, free agency happened. For example, Pittsburgh, we thought they would retain Justin Fields. With that said, I don't think this would be my favorite fit for him. Like the reasons you said, Aaron Rodgers, it's crazy how mirrored his career has become with Brett Favre. Obviously, he was a backup to Brett Favre. Brett Favre didn't really, accept him, motivate him, or become, he
had to learn his own
was
way.
like, I'm not my. And then there's every year of the will he retire, won't he retire? Every single bit of it has come into fruition with Aaron Rodgers, unfortunately. And with him, he's just kind of one of those that he goes by the beat of his own drum. He's not there to do anything but just play football.
Yeah.
And it is what it is. You don't have to judge him for it, but at the end of the day, that's not what's best for a young quarterback. On top of that, they do a questionable trade for DK Metcalf, and for the time being is going to retain and keep George Pickens unless the trade happens out of nowhere at this point. 2 diva receivers, offensive line that is trying to be fixed but has not been fixed, quarterback that isn't necessarily the best one to, learn from a talent perspective. Yes, that makes sense, but not from a holding the clipboard and meetings and all that stuff. That is not something that's going to help him out. But at the end of the day, I think that, like I said, this is his floor. This is where he's going to go unless there's a move up. Or there's surprisingly, he's all the way in the top 10, like we said, with New Orleans or something of that nature.
This team has the most personalities on offense I've ever seen. Like, honestly, like they just, every single one of them has a massive personality. And Jackson Dart also has a pretty big personality himself. So, yeah, it could be a clashing of heads, but at the end of the day, we have to mock where we think he might go. And I think this could be a spot just because of the fact that they need a young quarterback. They tried drafting one. They bring in Aaron Rodgers if they do, because we haven't had finalization on that, but we expect it. If that happens, it's like they need something that can be fallen back on, and maybe this is the guy.
What's funny is with Pittsburgh, nobody's really brought this up, but they're slowly becoming the Dallas Cowboys as being a team that you would think would be well run, but they're not.
That's what the Raiders were before the Cowboys.
It's been a little while since they've had, exceeded postseason success.
Right.
They're not winning playoff games anymore. And it's kind of just like, hey, on the surface, yeah, it makes sense. Pair Jackson Dart to Pittsburgh historical program. They're quietly tailing away from what they once were.
Agreed.
And Dallas, kind of one of those things. They're a brand. That's it. That's all they are until Jerry passes on or is able to just not be involved anymore.
Telling
at
you,
this point.
The Raiders were the same way. We had Al Davis, and we saw it. And now I'm watching the Cowboys do the same thing. So I agree.
Steelers are turning into that. San Fran has a little bit of that, but at least they've had recent success.
Right.
And they're just kind of going through transitions. But I don't know. I don't love the fit, but we'll see.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, this is kind of the floor of where he's going, like we wanted to emphasize this. And if anybody moved up for him, we wouldn't be shocked at all.
And then we'll go on to the next one, if I can find my mouse. The next one is a couple of guys that we already mocked to these teams in the first one. Nothing new has changed. Kenneth Grant's going to the Chargers. He's an ex-Michigan player with an ex-Michigan coach. It makes a ton of sense. Poona Ford and Morgan Fox have left in free agency. I really don't know that there's much to talk about with this. It just makes sense if he's here, because if he could go before this.
Yeah, with the Chargers, basically any mock that you've seen has been insert Michigan Wolverine here, whether that's Colston Loveland or Kenneth Grant. Is what it is. If they could, they would do Mason Graham, but they're just too far away at this point. But But yeah, Chargers, they have a huge need. Poona Ford's gone. Joey Bosa's gone. They need somebody on the defensive line to kind of plug holes, fill gaps, and all that stuff, and he is capable of doing so. And then Azariah Thomas, I don't know. This is kind of similar to what I said about the edge class of
Yeah, corner's hard.
after the first couple of corners, all these guys are in the jumble because they're all injured. They're all like bad in terms of down years and stuff like that. So I don't know if it's going to be Thomas, but corner is a huge pressing need for them. They have not moved on from Jair yet, but it sounds like they're still going to.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, corner's a pressing need. We put in just ain't broke, don't fix it yet.
I think Thomas is going to have the highest, like Thomas will have the biggest movement, like where we're projecting him as like he's going to move up boards fastest out of everybody. I know Maxwell Harrison ran the 40 and did well, but Thomas has the stylistic play, like that playing style that fits what most NFL teams like to do, and that's why I think Green Bay goes with him first overall, or first of the corners at that next spot. And then we will be going on to our next grouping. Oh, sorry. We're going to recap real quick. Patriots, of course, went Tet after the trade. Love that. Colson Loveland to the Seattle Seahawks. Jihad Campbell to the Buccaneers. Mike Green to the Broncos. Jackson Dart going to the Steelers. Kenneth Grant and Azaria Thomas going back to the teams we saw them in the first mock.
Yeah. So
it's easy enough.
Let's jump into the final quarter of this first round, and we'll wrap it up.
A new trade.
Oh, another trade. You don't say. Well, this one is the most obvious one, or at least the team that's trading down. Minnesota doesn't have a second, third, fourth pick in this draft. The only reason that they do have one technically is because they have a compensatory pick for Kirk Cousins. It's at the end of the third round, but they have two picks all the way. What is the range? It is in the top 138. They have two picks.
They're ranked last by on Tankathon. They're ranked last on draft capital, but next place is 40 ahead of them, and the place ahead of them is 120.
Yeah,
so it's bad.
They just don't have picks. At the end of the day, they only have 4 total in this draft, which is lowest among all NFL teams. Mm-hmm. They need draft picks. It is what it is. There's no easy way to say it, but yeah, they probably have somebody as a corner, or Malachi Starks is on the board at 24 that they could add, and it could be beneficial. But it's one person versus getting a couple more guys. They did invest a ton in free agency, so they did plug a lot more holes. So I think it's just depth, getting younger, and going into the late first round, getting a couple extra picks, something that's needed. Kansas City, kind of a pressing need. They are going to be trading that 31st to move up 7 spots. Kelvin Banks.
I love it.
2 straight years trading up for a Texas Longhorn is what we're vibing with right now. But yeah, Kansas City obviously. We saw this a couple years ago when they played Tampa Bay and it struggled. It was because of 2 injuries to both of their tackle spots and their backup tackle, and they had no tackles and the best pass rush. Similar this year. Philly had the best front 7 in the NFL, or defense overall, if you even want to go that far. And, everybody just struggled at left tackle, and they had to have their future Hall of Fame guard kick out because nobody else could step up and handle the work. And it just was an absolute shit show. They signed Jalen Wilson as a swing.
Jalen Moore,
sorry. Yeah. Jalen Moore as a swing tackle from San Francisco has done fine, but they did invest a little bit. But again, moved on from Joe Thuney. Kelvin Banks, there's been just too much of a drop for him in our eyes, and that's why we just thought it was too good to pass up. Kansas City, whether it's left guard, left tackle, whatever you want to call it, they do need an upgrade at offensive line. Obviously, they're going to make Trey Smith a very rich man in the near future, and Creed Humphrey, still top 3 center in football since he set foot in the league. So this is just another building block to revamp the offensive line to not be one of the sore weaknesses for a team that's still trying to stay in contention.
So there's a few things I want to say. First thing, of course, like you said, Joe Thuney's gone, so the guard spot is open. They are going to most likely fill it with Kingsley Suamataia, so he will be moving from tackle to guard, which is something we like, actually, on this channel. We like seeing, when if a career doesn't work at tackle, put him in a guard, let him try, let him see if they can figure that out, because there's a lot less pass rush responsibility in there. Kelvin Banks makes a lot of sense here, and I think the biggest thing is they move in front of Houston. And that was the trick here because I believe Houston would pick Kelvin Banks if that was the pick and the next spot. But because they know that Houston is going to be targeting either tackle or interior offensive line, being in front of them allows them to make their decision on who they want prior to Houston getting an opportunity. And we'll do Houston next, obviously.
Yeah, and with there's Banks, and then there's another lineman we'll talk about for the very next pick that are clearly warranted in trading up for. We like both of them a lot. They're some of our highest prospects at the position. But at the end of the day, I don't think either of these guys end up at 31. So if Kansas City wants one of those two, and they really value them as being a tier above whoever will fall into their lap at 31, I think you need to go get them. And at the end of the day, there's not many other needs. So F the picks. Do what you did last year. And Xavier Worthy, again, we weren't in love with the pick, but we just acknowledged that Xavier Worthy, that was his best possible landing spot.
Exactly.
And yes, killer into the second half into the season, and he's going to do very good as a hopefully wide receiver too on the team. And they get another person to not have to have him get 150 targets a game.
Well, Rashee Rice will hopefully play and be back if he stops getting in trouble.
And
so
suspended
and hurt,
and
like all the things.
Yeah. So Kansas City does show some aggression in filling a huge void at with Kelvin Banks, who has been one of the best offensive linemen since he was a true freshman at Texas.
Oh yeah, and then going on the next guy, which is we put a couple of offensive linemen on here. First one is Josh Simmons to the Houston Texans. Josh Simmons is one of our guys. And I won't get over the fact that everybody wants to say he has some of the best film in the first 6.5 games of his year this year, but we can't put him in the top 20 spots because he was injured and didn't get to play enough Big Ten. He had the best film because he's that good. And on top of that, he's had an amazing recovery. I've heard he's moving backup boards, which I'm like, why would he be down boards? It's a whole thing in my mind. But if you believe in talent, the talent is with Josh Simmons. Josh Simmons is a great pick for the Texans. I know that they did just sign Cam Robinson to play left tackle, but Josh Simmons actually has worked at right tackle and left tackle. He played a whole season at right tackle before he transferred to Ohio State. So it's not that he can't play there. And also, he's probably the heir apparent if he does get picked here to play the left tackle spot because he is the best left tackle in this class.
Yeah, and you're getting him all the way at 25, which is very rare when it's somebody talented. Actually, talented. It's a good year of tackles.
Yeah,
it's just not, or I don't even want to say it's not that deep because it is.
No, it's good. Deep. It's a good year.
So
it's a good tackle class.
Getting the best of the best.
Yeah.
At 25, you rarely see it for one of the most important positions in football. But at the end of the day, Houston just completely took the legs out on their offense. They just completely swapped out everything.
Mm-hmm.
Kenny Green, who was a first-round bust, traded him away. Shaq Mason, let him go. Traded away Larry Tunsil. And you got not a whole lot. You got, like you said, they signed temporarily Cam Robinson, who did fine as a spot starter. He was a free agent into the season for a reason. But he did fine in Christian Darrisaw when he went down from Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
He did a good job stepping in. But at the end of the day, he was a free agent into the season. So make with that what you will. And then Blake Fisher, who's a former day 2 pick, obviously has not started his career strong either.
He was overdrafted, to say the least. That was in last year's class. They did sign Trent Brown, Ed Ingram, Laken Tomlinson. I mean,
all just
old school guys that hopefully can help them in some way, maybe veteran presence. Maybe you need to play because Juice Scruggs might suck. Titus Howard is going to play guard because they have to pick. This is a big thing too. Titus Howard cannot play tackle, but I think he's a solid guard. So they need to figure out a way to keep him in there. Maybe it's Trent Brown. Maybe it's Josh Simmons, but there's a lot of things.
Obviously, they didn't finish as the worst offensive line in football. They weren't great last year, but it is a completely different unit now.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, on paper, they have by far the worst offensive 5 of any team, and it's not even close.
Right.
And being a contending team, that's a dangerous game to play because that's how teams that really disappoint when you are severely, severely limited or have a huge gap in talent between that and then your opponent. That's just one of the things that truly needs to be fixed. There's a lot of people that want to put receiver here. Sure, you can. Obviously, Stephon Diggs is likely to move on, and Tank Dell won't be playing in 2025. But you did pick up Christian Kirk, and again, I would pick an offensive lineman every single pick that they have for their first 5 picks. That is how much
Something
I dislike
has
what
to
they have.
hit. Something has to hit.
And then Tyler Booker.
Yeah.
He's a guy that's kind of gone up and down. He's one of the youngest offensive line in this class, but he did not help himself in the combine. He was very slow, did not move well, and he's kind of still is a top 25-ish pick, but he's organically dropped a little bit to this spot. I think Daniel Jeremiah actually didn't even put him in the first round.
He didn't.
That's how low he's starting to drop. So, but Baltimore Ravens losing guards this offseason, Pat McCarry going to Jacksonville. So they do have a need. We didn't, in our first mock, we had them taking our preferred tackle to them, but we didn't expect Ronnie Stanley to be re-signed long-term like they did. So still need to, revamp the offensive line a little bit, but it's just a different direction.
Yep, absolutely. And then let's go over a couple edge rushers. Los Angeles Rams get Shamar Stewart, and the Detroit Lions get Jack Sawyer. Someone is going to take Shamar, and I'm going to hate it. But at the same time, like, Shamar has all the upside as he has the he's a freak. He's an actual freak. And hopefully he can put it together. Like, I'm not praying for his downfall, but I can't pick him and put him high on our big board when I'm like, I can't fall. Like, some people are like, oh, I fall in love with just freakish athleticism. Michael, Shamar, like, both those guys are going to be on my top 15. And I'm like, why? Because, like, at the end of the day, we need to see more than 1.5 sacks per year. 4.5 total sacks in 37 games is terrible. And so we need to get better at that. And then on the other side, you have Jack Sawyer, who's possibly has one of the highest floors of anybody at the edge position. Detroit Lions, I think, and we really talked about who was going to go to Detroit as an edge. I just think they're going to love Jack. They love, first off, Jack Campbell was one of their guys. Aiden Hutchinson was one of their guys. And it's just, they like their guys. So I just think they're going to continue. They're just going to continue getting their guys.
Yeah.
And he feels like their guy.
This slide is the perfect epitome for at least the edges of ceiling versus floor. Because Shamar has no floor. He is out of the league in 3 years, kind of floor.
Nothing.
Jack is going to be a starter for, half decade plus. I just don't know if he'll ever be,
no, he's
top 10.
Probably an edge 2 on most teams.
Exactly. But at the end of the day, that still is very, very valuable. And like you said with Jack Campbell, Aiden Hutchinson, Detroit isn't shy in just getting their guys overdrafting from a lot of people's eyes. I mean, again, you want to talk about the draft class of, 2023. They traded up to get Jahmyr Gibbs when they just signed David Montgomery. F caliber move. Then Jack Campbell overdrafted by 20 picks. But then they get Sam Laporta and then Brian Branch. And if you just say you get 4 picks and you get these 4 guys, A plus draft.
Yeah.
But when you say, oh, you took him here though?
Yeah.
Really?
Who
I
cares?
got my guy.
Who cares?
That's what Detroit likes to do. And so with Jack Sawyer being a complimentary piece to Aiden Hutchinson, who hopefully can return to at least 90% or, ideally full strength next year for his gruesome leg injury. He was the decoy through the first month of the season, had a gruesome leg injury. But after that, and then the other front 4, front 7, whatever you want to call it, just completely fall apart. They did a good job resigning depth, but they don't really have a edge 2 yet.
Right.
And I think it's a really solid class to get one. Don't know who the guy is. If you want to say draft ranking wise, Jack Sawyer is the one that really nobody's putting as a first rounder. He's probably the lowest of any top 100 you want to put among all these 32 picks. But at the end of the day, I feel better about him than most of the guys that are above him currently going in the second round.
Well, it's not even just like feeling better. Like he's actually in our top 32. So we do believe in him as a talent, but it's more so the fit plus, his floor and like all the things. Like, I just think it makes a lot of sense. while Shamar is a little bit harder to get. But the Rams do love young, athletic guys that can come in and make impacts, and they've been doing a great job all over their defensive line. So add him to it, and there you go.
Yep. Hit the
Next,
ground running.
yeah. Next up, another guy that we think should be a little bit higher, but we don't really know where to put him, is Malachi Starks from Georgia. He's just so good at football, and he can do everything. And Washington has a solid secondary, actually, but at the same time, like he can play the nickel, he can play in both safety spots. He can do everything. So you're just going to get a good football player. Brian Branch, we talked about him a little bit on this with like comparison with Malachi. That's kind of the guy you got to get with him.
Yeah, there's going to be people based on the positions and like I said, a couple running backs, a couple tight ends, 3 quarterbacks. That's going to push down a lot of guys further than expected. I don't know who it's going to be, but I just have this gut feeling that whoever is going to be in our final top 20, there's going to be 1 or 2 guys that fall out of the first round entirely.
Yeah.
And I feel comfortable saying that. No idea who they are, though. With Malachi, just organically, the way this board fell, not many teams in the 20s really needed a safety. So
yeah.
Miami obviously was the start of whoever is safety 1. And then safety 2 is just kind of maybe you can make an argument for a team in the teens, but then really you can't make an argument for many in the 20s. So he kind of falls into a position where Washington been aggressive overhauling this roster over the last 2 years, but safety is one that still kind of needs some work. Cornerback Mike Sanders still had a really strong year last year. Marshawn Lattimore barely played, but they traded for him, and he's still on the team. And then Noah Igbenaji.
Yeah,
I'm sorry,
at nickel.
I still don't know how to say his name, but he hasn't given me a reason to do so.
This is where Malachi would start over him, in my personal opinion, right away. I think Cam Bynum is now there, I believe. Am I correct on that?
No, he is.
Is that the wrong team?
He's a Colt.
Oh, I knew somebody got a safety that I thought should get a safety. Who was it? Oh, Will Harris is there. Sorry. And then also Jonathan Jones was moved in, has been picked up from New England. So I think he can start over a couple of the guys in the secondary right away, including Quan Martin, Will Harris probably even, and he makes your team a lot better. So I think he fits, and then Noah, which I'm not going to even try his last name. So I think he fits on this team for sure.
Real quick, hypothetical at you. How reasonable is it to possibly throw them as the RB3 team?
No, I think it's reasonable. Just because I think that with Austin Eckler's old, and Brian Robinson was in the 22 class that kind of, they kind of fit in that way. So I think he's the perfect third down back, and you have Brian Robinson, who's an early down back. So I don't hate that idea. I don't think that it's been talked about, but I think it makes sense.
Yeah, I know with Travion before, Omarian's really risen. People are like, oh, RB2, whoever that is, and people thought early on it was Travion, could vault into a top 25 pick. And so even though Omarion Hampton is all the way to 12 in our hypothetical second mock, that doesn't mean that there's not a team, multiple teams in this 20 to 32 range that can take a running back. We just don't expect that. But whether it's him, Caleb Johnson, Quinshon Judkins, man, it's a historical class. But I just wanted to throw that out there real quick because they're almost the best player available team, and one of a true need really fell. But if all of the DBs are gone, they just don't love the edges here or what have you, like I wouldn't be shocked if they went that direction.
No, that's fair. I don't know that Malachi Starks will be there, so it's one of those things where it kind of makes sense to think about other options. Next up. Oh, well, almost next up.
Little recap.
Yeah, little recap. It's only five guys.
Yeah,
here.
Josh Simmons to Houston after Kelvin Banks gets moved up from Shamar Stewart. Obviously, Tyler Booker, we talked about them to the Rams and Ravens, respectively. Jack Sawyer to the Lions. And Commanders getting Malachi Starks in one of the better values of the first round for us.
Next up, there's another trade. It's our last trade.
Moving up to get fifth-year option Tennessee in this draft, they went with their quarterback one, getting Cam Ward. And all of a sudden, it's just like, who's he going to throw to? Calvin Ridley, still good, but already 30, going to turn 31 at the end of the season. And Treylon Burks has been a bust since they basically swapped him and A.J. Brown. Awful decision.
Yeah.
But he has not panned out, and also just tore his ACL. Tyler Boyd is gone now. Nick Westbrook-Akine, who was catching a touchdown every other pass last year, he is gone also. So you bring in Van Jefferson, who's just been a depth piece.
Right.
And that's it. That's all you got. So, I mean, you would think that they would be targeting a pass catcher of some sort in this draft. And so, with that being said, locking one down, getting an extra year, we're talking about Matthew Golden. I don't expect him to be here. I think he should be, but
talent-wise, for sure.
Based on the way that the board is looking, this is one of those guys that my feeling is he's probably a top 20 pick somewhere, and we're just not going to be happy about whatever landing spot.
We disagree.
I pray to God it's not Dallas.
We disagree.
Yeah, that's just kind of how we view it. So, but at the end of the day, Tennessee getting him, I think that would be a fun match make. Whether you want to put Buka there, Luther Burden, or him, whoever falls to them at 34 or 35, I bet you that if one were to fall or they move up hypothetically 4-1, it would be for said wide receiver, because that is the true sword need.
I agree with that. I think it I think it makes sense. I just obviously don't think the player should be this high. And that is what it is. Like, I can disagree with that all I want. I've seen players that I don't think should be as high go way higher than I expect, and some players that I think should go higher go much lower than I expect. So Cooper DeJean. So at the same time, like, I completely get it. I think that Tennessee should get a wide receiver, and getting that fifth-year option, like you said, makes a lot of sense. So I'm with it. Cam Ward needs a number one, and they were the 26th offense last year, and they basically have wide receiver threes on their team.
If you were the GM and you know that with your second pick you're taking a receiver, Golden, Igbuka, and Burden are all on the board, who are you taking as a Tennessee GM?
Burden, Igbuka, and
Golden are all available.
Well, I don't know who the best fit is. I mean, I think Burden's the top receiver out of those three, but at the same time, consistency and floor might be the best thing for a young quarterback. And so Emeka Egbuka probably is my favorite of those three for a Cam Ward at this position. I think that Luther Burden fits better in like a more pro-ready team, or higher level team that is ready to win some games, while you need consistency when you're a young quarterback and probably going to lose 13 games next year.
Yeah, and I'm completely on board with that idea. You know I love me some Emeka.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, we're doing a mock of predicting stuff. So if a hypothetical trade happened, people have separated Matthew Golden from Burden and Igbuka
right.
on their board. So that's why Golden is here. When we do the what would we do mock draft in a couple weeks, and one of us is the GM and we do a trade in, maybe you might see something a little different.
Maybe, yeah, for sure. Because I think it's a very good option. Next up is the Minnesota Vikings. They're going to go with Maxwell Hairston. He's just a really big climber. Like we said earlier with the Azaria Thomas, that it just cornerback position is difficult, but at the same time, like, we've seen Maxwell Hairston jump into the first round after running the fastest 40? No, second. Yes. Well, fastest cornerback 40. I don't think he was not the fastest. I was going to say, I thought he was second fastest of the whole combine. Wasn't necessarily he just has some other issues, and like, he only played 7 games last year, and there's some things. He's much more of a zone corner than he is a man corner, and he's a smaller guy, but Minnesota needs a corner. They've actually missed on corner a lot in their career in the last like 10 years, so it wouldn't surprise me if they, pick the wrong one out of the 6 that we have at this spot, because, Trey Amos, Benjamin Morrison, Savon Revel, it is what it is. You're going to pick. They're going to have to pick one, I believe, and Maxwell Hairston just makes the most sense because of the trend that he is on right now.
Yeah, and Minnesota, I know in this hypothetical trade back to 31, they're crossing their fingers and hoping that Malachi is the one who we had as a 1.0 standing pat and taking at 24 would fall to them at 31, because getting extra draft capital and still getting a top 20 caliber prospect is just great. Team building.
That's good business. Good business.
With that being said, they did do a ton of moves at corner.
Right.
In free agency, brought in Isaiah Rodgers. They brought back Byron Murphy. They brought in Jeff Okudah, Tavarius Thomas, special teamer. But safety. They lost Cam Bynum, like we said earlier. Harrison Smith is back, but he is 36, and that's it.
This was one of the hardest teams to fight with in my head because at the end of the day, I wanted them to find a safety, but like there really isn't one, first off. And then second off, they need the picks. So they have to trade back.
No.
And you don't know how far to trade back to be wrong. Because basically that's what happened is they traded back and they were wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But it is what it is. It's how the board fell.
We'll see where things happen. But I know if everybody's on the board, they would probably prefer at this point to go safety over corner.
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately, the top two didn't go there, and I think it'll be a little bit of a reach to get any of the next guys at the position up. But they could get them in the middle rounds, and I think they'll be more than happy with them.
Yeah, I mean, if they go and get Kevin Winston in the second round, like or the third round, because he's gonna fall for no reason, and he's gonna we'll love that pick over this, even possibly this Maxwell pick. And then the final pick of the draft is 32 to the Philadelphia Eagles. They just keep attacking edge. Donovan Ezeraku, who has the production, 60 total pressures, 16.5 sacks. He was amazing this year, and honestly on nobody's radar prior to this year. So he really took it by storm and went crazy. He's an outlier on height, but he has 34.5-inch arms. So I'm not worried about that part of it all. And they run a 3-4. He can play the outside linebacker spot, stand up. They do have Jalix Hunt. They have I'm sorry. Who did they sign? BJ Ojolari?
Aziz
Ojolari. Okay, I was like, I couldn't remember off the top of my head. So they have some guys, but they just love attacking rotational players for their, front seven, and keep doing it over and over and over. So we're just gonna keep doing it.
They had 3 big time front seven players hit free agency, and Zach Bond, Milton Williams, and Josh Huff.
Yeah, Michael.
No, it's
Bryce Huff. All right, I got it.
There is a Josh Huff, but
yeah,
Bryce Huff. All 2 of them left free agency, and obviously they were able to retain Zach Bond. But it's the best roster in football. There's no weaknesses. And at the end of the day, that's just kind of is what it is. They're just going to pick best defensive player on their board. I've seen some Derek Harmon here. I've seen some Walter Nolan. That would be unfair. But at the end of the day, they do have 2 elite interior defensive linemen. I know that they love going deep in that position as well. But I think defensive end / an edge is probably a little bit more of a need.
Yeah.
In if you're going to pick one or the other.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I do think that if they went Walter Nolan, like it's perfectly fine too. I think that maybe going, and I told you this earlier, maybe going like a swing tackle because Lane Johnson's 34, something like that. So that's an option. I just don't know because they have no holes. So I don't know where to go.
They brought in Mekhi Becton, who's a top 10 former bust.
Right.
And he became very serviceable as a guard because he was masked by a top 10 player at every single position on the rest of their offensive line. And now they trade for Kenyon Green, which makes me think that they're not going to go guard because you just traded for a first-round pick, former first-round pick. And, if he starts at right guard, he'll probably look better than he deserves to be because he's sandwiched between one of the best centers and the best right tackle.
This is where Luther Burden would be the pick if you're going to talk about wide receiver because you have the explosiveness from him. Like, just add him to A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, and Saquon. So
it's a luxury. It's a luxury
it would be
pick because, or when you're a team like this, but at the end of the day, you can do weird shit.
Yeah.
When you're a Super Bowl champion.
Sure.
No one's gonna bat an eye.
Yeah.
I mean, we saw Clyde Edwards-Helaire after
terrible.
Super Bowl when Jonathan Taylor was on the board. They were like, no, that 5'7" guy, that guy is our running back, and
won the Super Bowl.
Yeah,
the year after.
Anyway. Yeah.
Didn't matter.
Doesn't really matter. You can you can do a lot more risk here, but it's a fun situation to be in if you're an Eagle fan.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So let me stop the share if I can get my mouse to work. Why are you not working? There. Well, I'm gonna have to change the batteries, everybody. All right. So we're gonna stop sharing, but we appreciate y'all hanging out with us. It's been a good one. Mock 2.0, and I actually think that this one was more like I felt a lot better about where everybody went. I feel like we're pretty solid on like the positions of need and those types of things. So I'm excited for this year. I mean, we're almost it's 30. It's less than a month at this point, basically, when you watch this video. So it's coming, and I'm really excited to get this going.
Yeah, it's like the countdown to Christmas for us. Doing all the prep we've done, you've done a killer job covering and scouting everybody, putting our rankings together, and it's been a lot of fun doing this. I feel, like you said, very comfortable with this mock. I like a lot of the positions that were targeted. That's something that we really are strong at, is just nailing positions of target, of like plan A or plan B for every team. We do a really, really good job of that, and we have like a scoring system that will compare and contrast final mocks. If you paid attention in our last year's draft, where we did like a scoring system, we'll do something similar this year. But yeah, it was a whole lot of fun. Let us know your thoughts.
Yeah,
whatever
please.
team it is, doesn't matter. Trades, we did some trades. Whole lot of talking points on this one, so we want to hear your thoughts. Like the video already, comment, subscribe if you haven't been a part of this community yet. We're just mocking away, doing a lot of draft coverage, doing prospect rankings, did the whole offense last week that were released. Now we're working on the defense this week, and then putting that all together, and then we'll be just from that point, everything's set. Pro days will be done. It's just going to be speculation, mocks.
Yep.
Filtering through rumors, what would we do? All that fun stuff, and all of that is worth talking about in the near future.
Yep. We're just going to listen to everybody's BS and try to follow it all, because some of it's good BS and some of it's bad BS.
Right.
And then we'll get it back to y'all and let y'all know how we feel about it. But we appreciate y'all hanging out with us, and we will see you on the next one.
Later, guys.